gie to tell a soldier, a soldier, a soldier. I gie to tell a soldier before he gaed a war.
The place, Belgium. The time, 8 o'clock on a winter's night, and the Ghost's Walk. Every night at this hour for almost 70 years, the bugles have sounded here at the Menin Gate, where more than 56,000 names are frozen into the stone. They are the names of British soldiers who died fighting to defend the city of Ypres. But only some of them, for the Menin Gate is a memorial to the missing. The Great War consumed a whole generation of Britain's young men, and 1 in every 4 of the million who died here.
Here dead we lie, because we did not choose to live and shame the land from which we sprung. Life, to be sure, is nothing much to lose, but young men think it is, and we were young.
70 years later, people still ask why. But in the heady days of 1914, when the Great War erupted into the heat of a somnolent summer, why was the last thing people wanted to know. If anyone did, there was a ready answer. They called it patriotism, and it ran through the British nation and the British Empire like a fever. No one had any doubt that it was a just cause, even if it had all seemed to have happened by accident. Hardly anyone had cared a jot a few weeks earlier when some Austrian archduke had been shot at Sarajevo, a place they'd never heard of. But Sarajevo was in Serbia, and Austria had seized the opportunity to... Germany was forced to mobilize, for Austria was her ally, and Russia, who had an alliance with Serbia, had to mobilize too. France had a treaty with Russia, so was bound to enter a war on her side, and Germany was well aware that France, mobilizing on her very doorstep, was the real threat. The clever move would be to strike the first blow. So Germany marched into France, and the route she chose was through Belgium. Tiny Belgium, neutral Belgium. And with Great Britain pledged to protect Belgian neutrality, the chips were down.
Why do they call, Sonny, why do they call for men who are brave and strong? Is it not to you if your country falls and right is smashed by wrong? Is it football still and the picture show, the pub and the betting odds? When your brothers stand to the tyrant blow and Britain's call is God's. How will you fare, Sonny? How will you fare in the far-off winter nights? Will you sit by the fire in an old man's chair and your neighbors talk of the fight? Will you slink away, as it were, from a blow, your old head shamed and bent? Or say, I was not the first to go, but I went, thank God I went.
It was not merely a just cause, it was a popular war. Before it was a month old, Kitchener had far more than the 100,000 men he had appealed for. The lack of uniforms was a sore point with the would-be heroes who had seen themselves shouldering rifles and swaggering off in khaki right away. It was a sad come-down to have to drill in everyday clothes and to practice terrorizing the enemy with broom handles for want of weapons.
All we need is just a gun for to chase the bloody Hun. Think of us when we are gone far, far away.
In all of Kitchener's army, the one happy exception was the 15th Battalion of the Highland Light Infantry. To a man, they belonged to the Glasgow Tramways Department, and they had uniforms already. True, they were a dark green serge rather than khaki, but they were uniforms nevertheless, and they never missed an opportunity of rubbing the fact in.
Cheer, boys, cheer, pass along the beer, the whiskey and the soda and cigars, and and the clothes were ready-made for the dandy green brigade. Oh, the drivers and conductors, oh, the cars.
Meanwhile, the regular army was taking care of the war. The first fighting troops to set foot on the soil of France was a detachment of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. They arrived on the 10th of August, 1914. But within a week, there were 80,000 men in France. Within a fortnight, they were facing the Germans at Mons. Within 3 weeks, they had been pushed back with the French almost to the gates of Paris. The British public, anxiously following the fortunes of its army in the newspapers, was having to digest a host of unpronounceable names, along with colourful stories of valour as the army retreated. Landrecies, Le Cateau, the Marne, the Aisne, and then a new name was in the headlines, Ypres. Ypres was the end of the line, and it was soon a long line of entrenched positions that stretched for 400 miles from the mountains where France met Switzerland to the beaches where Belgium met the North Sea. Ypres lies on the inland edge of the coastal plain of Flanders, flat land, marshy land. But beyond it, a ripple of low ridges slopes gently up in a semicircle that resembles the rim of a saucer. Ypres sits like a cup on the low ground below. From the ridges on a clear day, it was just possible to see Dunkirk and the waters of the English Channel, which are less than 30 miles away. Encircling the town and defending it lay the mile or so of swampland they call the Ypres salient. A salient, says the dictionary, is a piece of land projecting into hostile territory so that the enemy is ranged round it on 3 sides. Not many of the soldiers were in the habit of using dictionaries. They merely knew that a salient was a place where you got shot from the front, from either side, and also in the back. The salient protected Ypres, and Ypres was all that stood between the Germans and the English Channel. The enemy attacked with crack troops fresh from Germany, and in 22 days of bitter fighting pushed the drag end of the British army back over the rim of the ridges, down the slopes of the shallow saucer, closer and closer to Ypres at their back. And then, at a wood on the breast of a gentle rise, they stopped. Just here, the remnants of the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders were in the line, and Corporal Matheson of B Company was one of the few who came out of it.
This is pure murder, not war. We had the Prussian guards prick through on our right, and we could do nothing. As soon as a man showed himself, over he went. Then, behold, when we looked round, there were the Germans coming across the fields behind us. We got up and rushed into them, but they were too strong for us. So we had to retire into a wood behind our trenches. It was a race between them and us to get to the wood. When the Germans did get there, we were waiting for them, and they got it between rifle fire, shell, and the bayonet. Not one of them got back to tell the tale. After this was all over, D Company was missing. I'm afraid they have been done in. Out of 1,100 officers and men that came out at the start, we have Major Gaydon and about 80 men left.
It was 99 days since the war had begun, and 4 years to the day before it would finally be over. The first Battle of Ypres had been merely the end of the beginning. But Ypres had been saved, and the news helped to lighten the blow of the long casualty lists of dead and wounded. By Christmas, 90% of the fighting men who had gone to France in August were wounded or killed. The blunt truth was that the old British Army had ceased to exist. If the war was to be won, it would have to be won by the new.
Under a grey October sky, the little squads that drill click arms and legs mechanically, emptied of ragged will.
I joined up in 1914 in February. I was 17 then. Of course, as you know, you like to have a go at anything, as it were. And this pal of mine, he was in the Territorials in West Princess Street, the 5th Battalion Scottish Rifles. And he coaxed me to come down and join. So we went down and we joined. And he got the King's Shilling, bringing a recruit. And we went into Great Western Road to an ice cream shop there. And the shilling lasted 4 ice drinks, so we had 2 ice drinks each. That was me in the Territorials.
The men of death stand trim and neat, their faces stiff as stone. Click-clack go 4 and 20 feet from 12 machines of bone.
I joined up at Glasgow Cross. There used to be a building between the steeple and the McFarlane's, and joined in there. And, well, they paid your fare up north and threw a kilt at you everywhere. You're Gordon Helder.
Click-clack, left-right, form 4s, incline, the jackbox sergeant cries. For 12 erect and wooden dolls, 1 clockwork doll replies.
Well, you see, you don't understand. Every boy wanted to go there. All my pals were in, all the village boys were in. And many of them, some of them were younger than I, and I was only just turned 17 then.
The rooks from out the tall gaunt trees in shrieking circles pass. Click-clack, click-clack go death's trim men across the autumn grass.
Kitchener's army, now 1 million strong, couldn't be turned into soldiers in a day, or a week, or a month. It would take the best part of a year before they would be halfway ready to fight. Meanwhile, the country and the army thanked God for the territorials. Without them, the war might well have been over by Christmas, for there had been nobody else to hold the line through the winter. The first of the territorials, the London Scottish, had arrived in the Ypres sector in October, where they had caused as much consternation to the local inhabitants as they undoubtedly had to the Germans. They wear a strange dress. It's a skirt, with, in front, some kind of brush made out of horsehair to protect the lower part of their body from saber cuts. Others thought they might be the wives of English soldiers, a flight of imagination which was given the lie in their first action. After that episode, the Germans, shaken to the core with their first encounter with the yelling and skirling of the kilted monsters, called them the ladies from hell.